we had a discussion. I was part of a group where we played the trivia every Thursday,
Mm.
and we got invited in later. We were the last couple to get into the group, and it always would go political.
Mm.
And and all the people in the group were on one side of the equation. And I try and be on neither side. I try not to have opinions. I try not to have I think this or I think that. I try really hard to say, what do the facts say?
Try to
That's
be
why I did
reasonable.
the yes. Where do the facts lead me? And that's hard to do.
Sure.
Hard to do. Sometimes the facts lead me where darn it, I didn't want them to go there, but they
Yeah.
go there. And so every night there'd be politics, and I just we ignored them for like 8 months. And then, of course, sure enough, along comes a U.S. Supreme Court decision on Roe versus Wade,
Mm.
and the whole world is at each other again. And they started on the politics, and I simply said, you're misunderstanding the ruling, and that was it. We were out of the group.
Oof.
So,
Well,
and what the funny thing was, we all pretty much agreed. I don't want to get into the topic, but we
sure,
pretty
sure.
much agreed. But yet, because I told them they were misunderstanding, that was it. It was done, right? 6 or 8 months of every Thursday together, it was over. So,
Gone.
and that was literally pretty much all I had basically said. I didn't talk about any positions or right versus wrong or who's good, who's bad. I simply said, you're misunderstanding the ruling, and that was it. So there could
That
have been a
speaks to the
big macro
challenge.
benefit if we just sat there and right.
Well, I think it's a beautiful example because I think it speaks to the challenge of, right, like we could philosophize, I could theoretically say, oh yeah, there's this macro benefit, but it's really, really hard, obviously. And I think your story articulates it, and maybe it even ties back to that fundamental question we're grappling with of, does it always have to benefit us? Because it's almost as if that first person who's going to kind of break that cycle or take that step, right? You said it's a give and take. Somebody's got to start that chain and give a little bit, right? When you do that, you're almost doing that on blind faith. You have to hope and trust that the other side is going to see your give, and then they're going to give some, and you're going to be able to do that. If they don't, not only do you not get that macro benefit, maybe you're worse off. And your example's a story of that, right? I'm not trying to be dramatic here, but for the sake of it, you had the courage to say, hey, I'm being reasonable. I'm trying to be thoughtful, but I think you might be misunderstanding this. And there was risk in that. And the risk played out where they said, I don't like that. We're not going to give it all. You're trying to maybe give, you're trying to have a conversation. We're just going to kick you out. And I think that's where, in real life terms, this gets really hard, and reasonableness gets really hard, because being reasonable when other people are being unreasonable becomes exponentially harder, right? Being reasonable in isolation is already hard, but doing it when you then have external people that are not doing it, as in your story, maybe that's even way harder, right? So how did you deal with that? How do you deal with that?
Boy, that's a great point, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because that brought something to mind that I really want to say. Uh, my decision to follow a path of reasonableness was the best, worst thing I ever did.
Mm.
And it was the best thing I ever did, because if you follow that path, if you make a conscious effort to follow that path, you're going to find it takes you to another plane as a human being. It takes you sort of above the crowd, the 30,000-foot view. And that's when I start to see how unreasonable we all are, including myself. You just watch this, and you say, wow, we separate often into family wants you to support them. You don't support their view, but their family, so you got to support us, right? So it was the best thing I ever did, because it took me to another level as a human being. But it's the worst thing I ever did as well, because I am constantly accused of being unreasonable,
Mm.
because I don't take either side.
Mm.
When in many situations, we look at both sides, and both sides are just what benefits us, right? And so, and when you sit there and you look at, that person on this side's got a good point, and this person on this side's got a good point. You don't take anybody's side. Really, everybody wants you to take a side. So that's the worst. Since I've decided to be reasonable, I've been accused of being unreasonable more than ever.